historical range, but also the lions in the Gaia Forest National Park are actually slowly spreading out to the rest of northwest India and into their historic range. I mean, there are talks about bringing them back to Saudi Arabia and other parts of the Middle East where they were once found. But I mean, I am in favour of them being reintroduced to their historic range. I mean, I've seen Asiatic lions in captivity many times. In fact, when I was at Chester Zoo a few years back with my mum, it was actually the first time I actually heard a lion roar, because I got to the lion enclosure and the big male actually looked right at me and then roared right at me. And I'm not even joking, my heart just went absolutely crazy. Of course, it went right through me, and I'm not even joking, I can actually smell his breath from there. And let me tell you, lions have terrible breath. And hopefully, in like 40 years' time, this magnificent species of big cat could increase in the wild. And of course, right here is their current stronghold in the Gaia Forest National Park, but they have been reintroduced around here, and they're slowly spreading to the rest of northwest India, and hopefully they will be reintroduced into Turkey and maybe Saudi Arabia. And here are the differences between the three lion species. Of course, the first one is the Barbary lion. Now, the Barbary lion was probably the largest lion. In fact, it grew to be bigger than a southern African lion, and it lived in North Africa, through the Middle East, and right into parts of Europe. And it's believed that these were the lions, along with the Asiatic lions, that were used on the Christians and gladiators in the Colosseum, and believed to be the legendary lions of Greece. But around the 1940s, the Barbary lion was wiped out in the wild. It became extinct in the wild, with the last recorded sighting being in 1945 or 46 in Morocco in the Atlas Mountains. And there are Barbary lions in captivity, but a lot of them are either victims of inbreeding or interbreeding, which has mixed the gene pool a little. And there are talks about bringing the Barbary lions back into the wild, but you know, as I said earlier, that's a debate for another day. Then there's the African lion and the Asiatic lion, which is a lot smaller with a smaller mane. Of course, the Barbary lion had a massive mane that went right across the shoulders and across the underbelly. I mean, I think that the Barbary lion should be brought back from the wild. Well, should be brought back into the wild. Same with the Asiatic lions, but I mean, as I said, that's a debate for another day. Now, this is the Clouded Leopard. Now, it's not actually a very big cat. I mean, it's probably no bigger than a domestic house cat, but even so, this cat has the largest canines compared to skull size of any carnivore. To put it in perspective, it's like having a set of daggers in your mouth. And of course, their colour, their patterning, or their camouflage, people actually thought that's how they got their name, the Clouded Leopard, but actually, they actually got the name the Clouded Leopard because they live up in the trees, because they're the most arboreal of all the cats. And as well as their enormous canine teeth and beautiful patterning, they also have very, very unique ankles. Like, they can almost completely turn their feet around, almost like a squirrel, to run up and even down vertical tree trunks. And of course, the clouded leopard hunts, does much of its hunting at dusk time and at night. And of course, it preys on monkeys, birds, and of course gibbons. And how it hunts them is because it hunts them up in the high trees, it has to pounce on them quickly, but if it miscalculates, their prey will either swing or fly away, or the clouded leopard will fall, and a fall from the canopy could be fatal. And I know a lot of you are probably saying that cats always land on their feet, but if any of you have watched Puss in Boots, you'll know that's mostly just a rumour spread by dogs. Now, although these are not much bigger than a house cat, they could still do me an awful lot of damage. But also, the clouded leopard is one of the most difficult animals in the world to find and film. In fact, people can actually spend months in the rainforests where these animals live and not come across them. I mean, they can see tracks and signs of them, but they are some of the most difficult animals to film. And this is their range in Asia. Now, I'm going to move on to South America, and I'm going to start with probably the second or third most powerful big cat, which is also the largest one in the Americas, the Jaguar. Now, the Jaguar is a little bit bigger than a leopard. In fact, a fully grown male could grow to be just over 2 meters long and weigh probably 2 times heavier than a man, or than a fully grown man. They also have enormous paws and canine teeth, a lot longer than my thumb, but also a very, very broad and bulky head that contain the muscles to drive a jaw that gives it the most powerful bite of any cat, but I will get to that bit later. Jaguars live in South and Central America, including Mexico and some parts of the southern states of the USA. And of course, they mostly live in jungles and forests, but they also live out on open grassland or wetland. In fact, probably the best place in the world to see jaguars is the Pantanal in Brazil, which is the largest wetland on Earth, and it's said to be the best place in the world to see jaguars. And in fact, jaguars are a lot like tigers and fishing cats in that they spend a lot of time in the water. In fact, it's where they can go to keep cool during the heat of the day, but it's also somewhere where they can hunt. And of course, jaguars are not fussy eaters, and they will feed on pretty much anything. In fact, they'll feed on fish, monkeys, sloths, wild pigs like peccaries, but their favourite food of all are tapirs, which are the largest forest animals in South America. But also, in the water, jaguars will hunt crocodiles, caiman, anacondas, pretty much any large predator that inhabits the water. So basically, nowhere is safe from this cat. And you can see there how the jaguar is killing a crocodile, and that's actually how the jaguar kills its prey, because unlike other cats that kill their prey by going for the neck, the jaguar does it very, very differently. In fact, when I said earlier that the jaguar has the strongest bite of any cat, I mean, just looking at the head, you'll see it's very broad and very, very thick set and bulky, and even the skull of a jaguar is very, very, very hard, and those teeth are incredibly long, and that's all down to how the jaguar kills its prey, because it kills its prey by biting right through the back of the skull and into the brain of its prey. And it can bite right through the skull of a peccary or a tapir, which have very, very thick bones in their heads. But if you think that's scary, think how frightening it would be for the Jaguar to use less force to bite into a human skull. And then it gets quite frightening. And like all members of the cat family, Jaguars are solitary for much of their lives, with the exception of mothers and their cubs. And a male and a female will only interact when it's time to mate and produce offspring. Of course, unfortunately, Jaguar numbers are but a fraction of what they once were, and a lot of that is mainly down to humans, because we are destroying the habitats they live in, like cutting down the forests and grasslands they live on to make way for farms, plantations and towns. But also, jaguars are hunted for their fur. But the worst is human-wildlife conflict, especially with cattle ranchers. Because jaguars that live near cattle ranches quite often go for cattle because the ranchers deplete them of their natural prey, and jaguars get hungry and they often kill cattle, and that of course angers the ranchers, who then take out their guns and illegally shoot them. And that quite often does not work, because if they kill one jaguar, another takes its place, and quite often it could lead to the jaguars attacking and killing ranchers in retaliation. But of course, there are people working to protect jaguars and stop the conflicts with, like, putting bells on the cattle to stop them, to keep the jaguars away, but also with teaching ranchers that they can coexist with these animals. And another reason why jaguars are so difficult to find in the wild is also because they are a master of the shadows. So they are experts at not being seen. And like many cats, they do much of their hunting at night. And even so, they are still endangered and still one of the hardest animals in the world to film. Oh, sorry about that. This is their range. In fact, the light green is their historic range and the darker green is their current range. As you can see, they once spread right into the southern parts of the United States, but they might still be coming up there, but I mean, I'm not entirely sure. Now, the final cat is the largest ranging land carnivore in all the Americas. It is the puma. Now, pumas are found throughout North, Central and South America, but these ones are found in the Andes mountain range. And pumas go by many different names. In fact, they go by the names of the puma, the cougar, the mountain lion, or the panther. Because despite their size and strength, in fact, a male puma can get to be about 2 meters long and be the same weight as an adult human. But of course, we'd be no match for them in a fight. And despite their size and strength, pumas aren't typically classed among the big cats like lions and tigers because they can't roar. So instead, they usually, like domestic cats, vocalise with low-pitched hisses, purrs and growls. But don't expect these cats to sound like your friendly tabby cat, because they're also well known for their screams, a trait that gave them the name Mountain Screamer. And of course, the puma is the top predator of the Andes, because they're a vital part of the mountain ecosystem, but until recently their behaviour was little studied. Of course, for many years, scientists were quite sure they knew what the pumas did during the day,